All right, guys, so today we're going to be working on two digital tool drawing assignments. We're going to be creating a sandwich with layers, and we're going to be creating a hamburger with layers. If you were present during our live class session, you will have already learned how to do the hamburger, but I'm just going to go ahead and do a review just in case you need a little extra information on how to create your burger. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. It says to practice using the digital app of your choice, digital art app, to create a burger drawing with the following ingredients: a bottom bun, a burger patty, cheese, tomato, lettuce, onions, mustard, top bun, and each ingredient should be on its own layer and labeled. You may add additional ingredients if you want. Get creative. When you have assembled your burger, use the Move tool to spread your ingredients out so they are all visible. You're going to save this as a JPEG and upload it to this assignment. If you click right here, you'll see an example of what I'm talking about. So here's the burger with all of your layers, and it's all spread out so that I can see every layer that you have added. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So I'm going to be using Photopea today. You can use whatever digital art making tool you prefer. Just keep in mind that you need to be able to create layers in whatever tool you are using. So please choose a tool that you can create layers in. So using Photopea, I will go ahead and go to New Project. Of course, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name this. So Mrs. Wade Hamburger. I'm going to select the size that I want to create this document in. So I'm going to choose a very simple size by going to where it says photo. And it's going to give me some default layouts for different sizes. And I'm going to pick the one that's 5 by 7, which means that this document, if I were to print it out, would be 5 inches by 7 inches. And I think that's a pretty good size to work on for this project. So I'm going to select the 5 by 7, and I'm going to select Create. And that will give me my new document that I'm going to start doing my hamburger on. So we talked about all the different tools that we're going to be using today to create our hamburger. So I'll be going over those one at a time as I create this hamburger. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. We automatically have a background layer whenever we create a new document, but I'm going to start a new layer because each one of my ingredients needs to be on its own layer. The Create New Layer button is right down here. It looks like a little box with a folded up corner, and it says New Layer when you hover over it. You can also create a new layer by going to where it says Layer on the top of your toolbar in photopea.com, and you can click on that and it will give you a menu, and you can select New and Layer and create a layer that way. Many of these digital applications like Photopea and Photoshop have multiple ways of doing a job, so just keep that in mind as you're working. There's multiple ways to do something most of the time in this program. So now I have my new layer, and it's called Layer 1, and I know that I'm going to have my bottom bun for my burger on this layer. So to change this, I'm going to double click on the text where it says Layer 1 with my mouse, and that's going to allow me to change the name of that layer. So I'm going to write bottom bun, and I'm going to hit Enter, and that will name that new layer. Now I'm going to use my brush tool to create my bottom bun layer. I'm going to find the brush tool located on my toolbar. It's right here, or I can hit the B, and that will automatically select my brush tool. We went over your different hotkeys in class, and the two hotkeys we talked about were the bracket hotkeys located next to the P on your keyboard, and those make your brush tool bigger and smaller. The left one makes it smaller, the right one makes it bigger. So I'm just going to hit the right one until that little brush circle increases in size to the size I want my bottom burger bun to be. So that looks good right there. Now I'm going to choose the color I want my burger bun to be by clicking down here on the color picker, and I'm clicking on the top box to select the color I want to create this burger. I want it to be like a brownish tannish color, and those colors are located kind of in between the orange and the yellow on your little rainbow toolbar here. So I'm just going to click that and then kind of click around until I see a shade that I think would look good, and then click around in there as well. And I'm going for like a light tannish brown, like I said. And I think that looks good. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to just maneuver my brush tool on my background, and I'm going to click just once, and that will create a circle shape using the brush tool. And that's going to be my bottom bun. Now I'm going to create the next layer, which is going to be my burger. So I'm going to create a new layer. It's going to say layer 1. I'm going to double click on it, and then I'm going to name it burger and hit enter. Now I'm going to select the color I want my burger to be, and I want it to be a bit of a darker brown, like a beef hamburger patty. And I think that looks good, and I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to use that bracket tool hotkey, the left-hand one, to decrease the size of my brush tool so it's a smaller circle. And then I'm going to click, and that's going to create that circle shape for my burger patty on top of my bun. So now I have two layers, my bottom bun and my burger. All right. Next, we're going to add the cheese. So we're going to create a new layer. Actually, you know what? The cheese is going to be a little bit different. We're going to use a different tool to create the cheese, and I'll show you how we do that. To create the cheese, we're going to be using the shape tool. So if you look for the shape tool on your toolbar, you see my mouse right here with my little arrow. As I move down toolbar, the shape tool is located right here. It's above the hand tool. So if you find the little hand icon on your toolbar, it's the square that's right above it. And when you hover over it, it says rectangle. And I'm going to click on that. All right. So now I have the rectangle tool selected, and I'm going to see that my toolbar at the top has changed to show me some of the settings that I can use to adjust my rectangle tool. The fill is the color that's going to be inside of the rectangle I'm going to create, and the stroke would be the line that goes around the outside, like the outline or the border. I'm going to change the color of my fill by clicking on that red button, and I'm going to look just down here, and I see these different swatches. I also see this little square right here. That's another color picker that I can use to change my color. But I'm just going to use one of these already available swatches because I want my cheese to be yellow. And there's already a square right here that allows me to choose the yellow color. So I'm going to click that, and that's going to change that to yellow. And I'm just going to close this color picker since I'm not using it. Do that one more time. Just make sure. So now it's there. So that should be good. Now I'm looking at the stroke. I do not want a stroke on this rectangle shape that I'm about to do. I just want it to have a fill with the color yellow and no line going around it. So I'm just going to leave that with the white square with the X inside of it, because that means that there will be no stroke when I do this. So I'm going to leave it as it is. So now I'm going to click and drag, and this is going to create a little preview square. And once I let go, it will create that square for my yellow cheese. So another tool that you will find useful while you're creating your layers is the Move tool. And I'll go ahead and show you where that's located. The Move tool is going to be this top arrow at the top of your toolbar on your application. It will say Move tool when you hover over it, and it looks like a arrow with a little cross next to it. When you select that tool, it allows you to move whatever you have put on the layer that you just created. So you may have noticed that when I chose the shape tool and created my shape, it automatically created that square in a new layer, and it says shape 1. What this means is that this is a shape layer, which has its own properties to it. So I'm going to go ahead and change this layer, the name of it, to cheese by double clicking where it says shape 1. I'll go ahead and type in cheese and hit enter. And now my layer is labeled properly. Using the Move tool, I can actually click and drag on that layer if I've selected it. So you select your layers by clicking on them, and you'll see that the background changes a darker color, so you know that you've selected that layer. I'm selecting my cheese layer, and using that Move tool, I can actually click, and I can drag it, and I can move it around and kind of like decide where I want to put it. To make sure that you have your transform control box selected when you're using the Move tool. So watch what happens when I select that box. It will give you these little nodes right here at the corners and middles of each of the sides of your shape. And this actually allows you to click and drag and adjust the size. And, you can make it skinnier, you can make it fatter. So you can click and drag it around to change and adjust the size of that shape when you have the Move tool selected as well. So again, make sure to get these when you have the Move tool selected. You want to make sure you have Transform Controls selected to give you that option. Otherwise, you won't see those little nodes appear. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust my cheese to make it the correct shape square that I want it to be, and I'm going to hit Enter. All right, so that's our cheese layer. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next layer, which is going to be our tomato. So I'll go ahead and create a new layer by clicking New Layer. So remember, the cheese layer is the only one that you're not creating a new layer for. That's where you're going to select the Shape tool, and it makes its own layer automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and double click where it says Layer 1 on my new layer and change it to Tomato and hit Enter. I'm going to get my brush tool back because I'm using my brush tool again for my tomato. It's a nice circle already. I think I'm going to make it a little bit smaller by hitting that left bracket, make it a little bit smaller. And I need to choose the color. So I'm looking for a nice red. I think I might go a little bit more dull than that. That looks good. And I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to click to make my tomato shape. And I'm actually going to go ahead and make my brush tool even smaller by hitting that left bracket tool until it's nice and small. I'm going to change my color to an even lighter red. And I am just going to start dragging and clicking and dragging my mouse to start drawing. And I'm just going to add a little bit of detail to this tomato. Those little lighter sections inside the tomato when you would cut it open and where the seeds would kind of be located in that kind of slimy area. That's what I'm drawing right now. So it's, it's not going to be perfect. We're drawing with the brush tool using a mouse or possibly even your touchpad if you're using a Chromebook. So this isn't going to be, super perfect, but I'm just going to go ahead and add that detail just to get a little creative with it. Just adding these little triangle shaped segments that you'd see in a slice of tomato. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a even lighter color now for my brush tool. Almost white, it's like a very, very light pale pink. And I'm going to use that to just add some little seeds. So this is kind of like more like a cartoon version of a tomato slice. It's not like super realistic, but you can still tell it's a tomato. So I'm just clicking and adding those little circle shapes, and there I've got my tomato. Okay. We're going to add another layer, clicking our new layer button. I've got some craziness going on. There we go. All right, new layer, double click. This is going to be my lettuce layer. All right. Now I'm going to go down to my color picker. I'm going to find a nice green. This one's like a super neon green. I think that's going to be too neon for like lettuce. So I'm going to pick a more realistic color. That looks good. And now I'm going to just draw my shape for my lettuce. I'm just going to draw the outline of it and make sure I connect that all the way across. And now I'm going to show you how to quickly fill a section that you've drawn an outline around. I'm going to go over to my toolbar and I'm looking for the tool that is called Gradient Tool. Now, I don't want to use the Gradient Tool, but whenever you look at each of the tools on your toolbar and you see that there's a little arrow underneath each of those icons, that means that there's additional tools on that section where you click, where you can access different tools. So I'm going to right click where it says Gradient right here, and it's going to give me a little menu that shows me what the additional tools that are on that button are. And I'm going to select where it says Paint Bucket Tool. You can notice that that hotkey is G on this. So now I have the Paint Bucket tool. And now when I click inside of this line that I just went all the way around and then connected, so it's one shape with no gaps. If I click in the middle, it will fill that empty space with that same color. So you may notice that there's a little bit of a line, kind of like where that edge was, and you can get rid of that just by getting back your brush tool and going around and filling that in. All right. I'm not going to be too nitpicky about that, but that's how you quickly fill in a shape if you don't feel like just doing the whole thing with the brush tool. So that's our lettuce layer. All right, next we're going to create a new layer, and this is going to be your onion layer. So I'm going to name it O-N-I-O-N for onion. And I like those purple or red onions. I prefer those when I'm eating raw onions as an ingredient on something like a burger. So I am going to get my brush tool. I'm going to choose a light purple color because that's the kind of onion that I prefer. So right over here. Okay. I'm going to increase the size of my brush using that right bracket tool hotkey. I'm going to make it about this big. And I'm going to do a little slice of onion right here. But it's a really, really big slice of onion. And if you're like me, you prefer like little rings rather than like a big old slice like that, because that's a lot of onion. So to get a ring shape, I am going to change my tool to the eraser tool, which is located right here. So you see the brush tool is right here, and there's a little stamp tool, and then below that is the eraser tool. The eraser tool works just like the brush tool, where if you click and drag, you will basically erase. So if you see that, it's erasing. And it looks green because the layer underneath that is that green lettuce. But if I were to erase this and there was nothing behind it, it would look white. So I would like to erase this big old center of my onion. To do that, I am just going to increase the shape of my eraser tool the same way I would my brush tool. I think of it like the brush tool is the positive and the eraser tool is the negative. The brush tool adds, the eraser tool subtracts. So now I'm going to click in the middle of that space of my onion with the eraser tool, and then it's going to erase it just like that. So I have a nice little onion ring right there. I'm switching back to the brush tool. I'm going to make another little onion, I think right here. And I'm going to hit my eraser tool. I'm going to shrink it down so it's just a little bit smaller. I'm going to make a little smaller onion ring right there. So that's how I'm doing my onions. All right, so I think the last thing we're going to do is our ketchup and our mustard, and those will be pretty easy. So I'll create a new layer. I'll name it mustard, hit enter. I'm going to change my color to a light yellow, maybe more like a mustardy yellow, kind of like a brownish yellow. And I'm going to decrease the size of my brush tool to a smaller size. And I am just going to, oops, what's happening? Oh, you know what? I still have my eraser selected. So I actually have to click my brush tool. There we go. Shrink it down. Okay, and now I'm just gonna, kind of like I would on a real burger, just kind of squirt it, just like that. All right. Now I'm going to create my ketchup layer, name it, change my color to a ketchup color. We'll choose that same kind of tomato color. Actually, I think I might maybe make it a little bit more red. There we go, so I can tell a difference. And I'm going to squirt it on just by drawing a little squiggle, just like this. And there's my ketchup. All right. So now we're going to add our top bun because we're almost finished building our burger. I'll go ahead and click New Layer. I am going to make sure my brush tool is nice and big. I want to make it the same size as that first bun, so I'm just going to increase it until it matches. And now to make sure I get the right color brown, because I want it to match that first layer, I'm going to find the eyedropper tool, and that's located on your toolbar. So I'm going down. It's this little, and it looks just like an eyedropper, and it's called an eyedropper. I'm going to click that eyedropper tool, and what this does is when I click with that tool on any part of my burger here, it will suck up and copy that color down in the color picker. So if you watch, I click on the green, it changed green. Click on the yellow, it changes yellow. The red changes to red. So I want it to be this color right here. That is my burger. So that's an easy way to just choose a color that you've already created without having to like guess on the color picker at what you did. So I'm going to use the eyedropper to click, and now my color is that light brown that I used for my bun. I'm going back to my tool, for my brush tool, and I'm going to click and create my top bun. I'm going to decrease the size of my brush tool to be really small, and I'm going to create or pick a lighter color of that light brown and hit OK. And now just be a little bit creative. I'm just going to draw those little sesame seeds that you get on burgers. Just being a little creative here. It's kind of like trying to do like a little teardrop, but it's kind of looking more like an oval or a blob, but I'm not too worried about it. Just a couple of little details. All right, so there's my burger bun. All right, so we have our completely assembled burger. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit by clicking on the zoom tool. And you have the plus or the minus to zoom in or to zoom out. Okay. Now I want to spread all of these layers apart so I can see a little bit of each of the ingredients. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that now. So we're going to go back to that move tool, which is that arrow at the top of the screen with the plus sign. And make sure you have transform control selected so you see that little border with the nodes that gives you the controls to change it. Again, if you check that and that box is not checked, you won't see it. So make sure it's checked. And I'm just going to click and drag that bun all the way up here so that I can start seeing my layers. And I'm making sure that I have selected that layer one. You know, I forgot to change the name of that. So let me go ahead and change the name to top bun, enter. So I've selected my top bun layer, and that's how I can drag it around. You have to make sure that you've selected the layer you're trying to move, otherwise it won't move. So now I'm going to select my bottom bun, and I'm going to click and drag it down over here so I can kind of see the difference between my bottom bun and my top bun. I'm going to select my burger, and as you can see, because I've selected my burger, that's the one that's moving. Even though you can't really see it very well, if I click and drag, it's only going to move that layer. I'm just going to pull it down here. Same thing with my cheese. Pull it down here. My tomato, pull it down here so I can see it. You can see my lettuce, you can see my onions, you can see my mustard, you can see my ketchup. So now we can see all of the different parts of our burger, which is what I want when you guys save this and turn it in, so I can see that you did all of the layers correctly. You're totally welcome to do different ingredients if you want. If you want to add more ingredients, you can. But make sure you have these ones that I've done in this example before you add any more, because I want to make sure you did those ones first, all right? And then you can add anything else you want. The more ingredients you add, the more kind of crazy and chaotic it might be, so just be careful about that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to upload it to Google Classroom. So I'm going to where it says File, and I'm going to, so if we wanted to save this and come back and work on it later, so to save this file, I'll show you how we're going to save it. We're going to click up here where it says File at the top of your toolbar. And to save this as a file that you can go back and edit, you would click Save as PSD, which basically means that you're saving it as a Photopea document, which you can then open, and you will see your burger and you'll see all of these layers, and you can go back and you can add things or you can change things. That's how you would save a file that you were planning on going back to continue working on if you weren't quite done yet. Because if you close this browser tab, you'll lose your work. So that's how you save it. To save it as a file that you're going to turn in for a grade, you're going to go down to below where it says Save as PSD, and you're going to click Export As, and you're going to choose the JPG button, because again, that's the most universal picture file type, and it's the easiest to share. So we're going to click on that. You'll see your little preview screen where it's got a zoomed in kind of like preview of your art that you just created. We're not going to mess with anything. We're just going to click Save. And you will see that it will download to your device. Again, if you've got a Chromebook, it will download to your Google Drive. If you have a regular computer, it will download to whatever folder your computer automatically downloads things to. For mine, it's like a download folder, so that's where I can go to find it. So to turn that in, we're going to go back to that assignment. So there's my example that I was looking at earlier. So we're going to click View Assignment. You're going to click Add or Create. You're going to click Either if you're on a Chromebook, you'd click Google Drive. If you're on a regular computer, you'd click File. I'm going to go to where it says Upload to upload my work. I'm going to click Browse. And it's good. So I've got my file saved in my graphic art folder, so I'm going to find that, and here it is, Mrs. Wade Hamburger. So I'm going to click on that and click Open. That's going to upload that to the area where it says Your Work, and I'm going to click Turn In to turn that in. And it's just going to make sure that everything looks correct, and then I'm going to click Turn In. And that's how you're going to turn in your hamburger assignment.